few months back, I released a video on the MCDM playtest packet, the first one to come out that was released via Patreon. They released another Patreon playtest packet, PPP, and I got to play again. Of course, it is no longer called the MCDM RPG. It is now called Draw Steel. Let's talk about it, but just a disclaimer, they've literally released the backer kit version of the playtest stuff just a few days ago. So I don't know how much of the playtest packet stuff stayed in the backer kit and how much they changed. So that's just a disclaimer. If you're using the backer kit stuff, might be a little bit different. I don't know. Other disclaimers, I literally cannot remember all the specifics from the first playtest packet that was 6 months ago. I will touch base on a couple of things that I noticed were different or that I was told were different, and we'll kind of go from there. Disclaimer number 2, obviously things can still change with this. Obviously, I don't know what's changed in the backer kit. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, been pretty busy. Disclaimer 3, I did not play as a director this time. I will touch on it a little bit, at least from what I saw, but it is not from direct experience. 4. Is this 4? All the players in this group have play tested with me before, which we will touch on and is kind of important. Disclaimer 5, we did not make it through the full adventure released in the Patreon playtest packet. We did get to try combat, negotiation, and a montage. We tried to touch all the bases to get a good feel of everything in the game. Without further ado, let's talk more about it. So here are some changes from last time. They now use a 2d10 system. Again, if you were unaware, MCDM's Draw Steel does not have a roll to hit. You just always hit. However, now they're using a 2d10 system, which offers a bell curve, which means you pretty much always do normal damage at least. I also think, though I cannot remember entirely, that the tiers are slightly different. The result of your 2d10 roll determines how intense your damage is or not. So there are tier levels, and I think those tiers seemed better to me than before. At the very least, they're more interesting than I remember. Even if you succeed with a tier 1, it can mean some small consequences, like if your move allowed you to shift, maybe you don't shift as far or one less square. You can also fail the test rolls if you roll a tier 1 result. In fact, there are 3 test outcomes I'll put on the screen here. The other thing that definitely changed was Banes and Boons. I remember before they were stackable D4s. Now it's called Edges and Banes, and you can stack at most 2. They are no longer D4s. Instead, if you have an edge, you add 2 to your roll. If you have 2 edges, that's a double edge. And instead of adding anything, your result automatically goes up 1 tier. This is the same for Banes. So -2 for 1 Bane, or down a tier if you have a double Bane. I think this is actually better than before. I do remember struggling to add Banes and Boons and working together to boost each other. This time around, it felt much easier to keep track of, but this could also be because this is the same group that played the MCDM playtest with us before, so maybe we had more experience in knowing what to expect. This was no longer our first rodeo, so we're actively trying to give each other edges and move our rolls up a tier. I also noticed something called villain points. I was not the director, so I cannot say exactly what those villain points did or did not do or how they work, but they seemed very similar to my Shadow's insight points, and they seemed to accumulate and you got to spend them on really cool moves. From my perspective across the table, I do think it was very hard for the director to keep track of. I thought it was hard to keep track of insight points for the Shadow. This could be something that would get better over time, but every time my turn started, I was supposed to give myself 2 insight. I didn't always remember to do that, or I forgot if I marked it. I could see this being an issue on the other side of the table as well. Of course, there could have been something mechanical on his end that I wasn't aware of. Like, I don't know when he got villain points and whatever. No idea. If you like what you're watching, consider supporting me on Patreon, the best way to support creators on YouTube. You can get behind the scenes, plus you can get ad-free versions of my videos. Also, live streams, there's shop discounts, hopefully some paper products coming out, definitely a magazine in the works. There's lots of stuff there. So yeah, link in the description. From the last playtest, I don't remember if there was a difference between free triggered actions and triggered actions. Those kind of gave us a little bit of a hiccup. A free triggered action you can take whenever, as long as you have the resources and the trigger happens. While a triggered action you can only do once per round. I liked them, but it gave a layer of complexity I wasn't expecting. It kind of felt like actions versus bonus actions. It made it more complex than I think it had to be. And maybe this could get better with more experience in the game, or maybe it's, renaming free triggered actions to something else. No idea, but I did notice that every time we had to do a triggered action, we had to look it up and see if it was free or not. This one still has the zipper initiative, and honestly, it was much easier to play this time. I know last time it felt like it was slowing things down, and I don't know if this is a result of us having played once before. We also played Daggerheart with not everybody in this group, but a few of them played Daggerheart with me as well, and that also has a similar free-for-all zipper initiative. This time around, since everybody kind of anticipated things, it was easier. I also think that in other tabletop games, you often kind of hide your best moves so that you feel cool and you do something crazy and that changes the battle for everyone. In Draw Steel, you kind of don't do that. You have to share what you're going to do because you could be setting someone up for something else. You actually have that discussion on strategy. I'm interested to know what others think. Do you hide it, or do you discuss thoroughly your strategy? Honestly, I think this would depend on the game. Also depends on what kind of battle it is. If it's against a boss, you guys might strategize more, that kind of thing. Because you have to really share and rely on each other, there's a lot more spotlight sharing. Nobody really hogs the spotlight. Everybody does some cool things, and there's more opportunity for collaboration, which I think is really cool. That said, complications are something you can kind of keep to your heart. So if you're looking for a little hidden backstory piece, keep your complication more closely tied to that. I absolutely loved complications. They were all so interesting to me. It really adds a lot to the roleplay. A complication essentially gives your hero an ability or a special trait that's usually positive. So my shadow had a complication that gained extra stamina. However, they also give you some sort of negative. So if my shadow lost all her stamina, she would turn into a raging elemental bent on destruction of pretty much all living creatures with full disregard for her own safety. So they were interesting and fun twists on characters that I just really, really enjoyed. Like I said, we tried negotiations and they felt similar to last time, though I feel like it was better this time around. And I think that was a result of experience. So that was good. We were much better at using our characters to our advantage and relying on each other. I think I could comment more on this if I were running the game, but as a player, I felt like it felt like a skill challenge. It felt like things were more at stake when talking to someone. The montage was pretty exciting, actually. In fact, after the game, all the resident DMs who were playing this playtest all started brainstorming ways to use it in D&D for now until MCDM stuff comes out. But it's essentially a better version of a skill challenge. They're the same tiers as before, only now you need a certain amount of successes versus failures. And hopefully I'm remembering this all correctly, but if you hit the success threshold, then you succeed. If you hit the fail threshold, then you fail unless your total successes are too higher than your total fails. Then you succeed, but there's consequences. The other cool part about the montage is that you can use any skill for your role. However, you can only use it once per player. Other players can use that same skill, they just have to use it in a dramatically different way. This made it kind of hard towards the end of the montage as we were running out of ideas, but it did make us all be super creative and really lean into our characters and the roleplay aspect. And we all really came up with some pretty cinematic moves. I don't want to ruin any of the adventure, but we succeeded with consequences. Overall feelings of just the gameplay. After the game, everyone had a big high. We did so many cool things. It was all pretty exciting and crazy. We were still talking about those cool moments after. The only issue I saw from this was from a director perspective. I mean, obviously he was also excited, and I think listening to people talk about the game and coming off on a high and chatting away about playing it in the future, that's all really good as a DM to hear. It means you're running a great game. And it's always really reassuring and great to hear when your players are super excited. I don't feel like he had as many cool moments. It could have been because he didn't utilize the villain points as well, but it also could have been because we didn't have any boss battles. Again, we never finished the adventure, and maybe the boss battle would have given him more opportunity to do some, high stakes moves. I guess that would be the only thing I was like, I don't know if the director felt as much on a high as the players did. For me as a DM, the best feeling is when your players don't want the game to end and they keep talking about their experiences with it in that session or in past sessions. I think it's still a different kind of high, right? I do wonder if it would still feel this high every week, or every 2 weeks whenever someone's playing. I do want to mention one thing for part of this playtest. My character was focused on simply saving civilians in the first section. I think that this did not lend itself to any cool moments for my character. I didn't feel like I was contributing to the overall battle. Unlike when you're fighting, doing the side objectives did not give that immediate feeling of satisfaction, So it felt like everyone else was doing super cool things and I was just there. We did get a reward after the battle for saving all the civilians that I did, so it was worth it in the end, but there was a small disconnect there I just thought I would mention. Towards the end, when we reached the bottom floor, I stopped trying to save civilians because I was like, I want to try some cool moves, and then when I got into the battle, I did some really cool things and it felt kind of worth it because I did a lot in that short span of time. It felt like my character really showed off all her skills. I just wonder if all side objectives during battles will feel that way, So I figured I would mention it. Next, let's talk about making characters. Now, we did use pre-gen characters for the playtest, but they gave a section about creating characters, and I just wanted to kind of run through that. I did try my hand at making a character. I tried to make essentially a druid. I tried to recreate a druid type character because I love druids, and rangers. Those are, if I play, those are normally the two I play, or a rogue. I've been into rogue lately. I did not play with this character. All I can give you is a general sense for the overall character creation process. I did think that it was really hard to navigate, but disclaimer, they know that it's hard to navigate. It's because they literally just give you a Word doc. It's just a dump of information. Half the battle in most of these books and most adventures is just formatting and making it presentable for someone to read, breaking up the text, making it easy to read. So that's half the battle. The design part is extremely important. This did not have any design to it, so it made it a little bit harder to navigate, but we're just gonna kind of ignore that. I'm just glossing over it. I liked that the first step that they provide is to think about the character, and it also gave brainstorming questions. I feel like though starting with your class is normally what people do. So I would have liked to see that as step 2. It wasn't. In general, I know what class I'm gonna play before I know my race, my heritage, any of that stuff. And I kind of build that backstory as I pick the things from my class. Wanted to do that even when trying to make a character for Draw Steel. So I did like the section about the make connections, because this is also something that lends itself really well to roleplay. This is something that Daggerheart also did that I 100% love. I think this also makes the table as a whole work better as a team. They already have connections. They're already working together. It kind of eases into roleplay without having it be too awkward. Our table were experienced players or DMs, so RP was not an issue for us. But I think for less experienced folks, or for people who kind of struggle with that role-playing aspect, stuff like that is a tool that really can help. And this one was something I didn't know that I needed in my life, but I really enjoyed that they had a section about changing your character options. I think that this makes the decision process feel way less permanent. And sure, in 5e, you can talk to your DM and be like, I want to change this because I don't like it. And usually you guys can work something out and it's fine. When making a character, doesn't it always feel like it's permanent and it's gotta be like that forever? So having like this kind of does alleviate that pressure, especially since it's a system I'm not super familiar with kits and things that I'm not 100% familiar with. The ancestry section, each one had a whole big story about the ancestry. I didn't mind this, but because the format wasn't there, it was kind of overwhelming. It was just like a big block of text. And I was like, what am I looking at? I did like the culture building because it helps flesh out your character backstory more. It's not like you just pick a city or a town and you just never look back. Instead, it kind of helps carve out a character personality. This is the same for the career aspect. However, I do wonder if the career aspect will encourage every hero to have a tragic backstory. They call the point where you switch from your career to being a hero or to being an adventurer the inciting incident. I guess you really do need a compelling reason to start putting your life on the line for other people. So it kind of makes sense that maybe something tragic or really world changing would happen. They did have examples that weren't tragic. The Sage one had one where they read a story about adventurers saving the timescape and then they decided to do the same. It can be done, but I just don't know if players will actually try to do that or if they will always pick something tragic. For a druid, the best kits to me was either a green elementalist, which deals with plant life, or a fury, actually, with a Stormlight kit. So the Stormlight kits were a way to change into an animal form when you rage. Honestly, would be super interested to see how this character plays. There is a catch. There's only one animal form for your kit. At the moment, they only have a few options, which is okay, except there wasn't a panther or like a tiger or a cat-like one. So it was a little bit sad. Of course, you could make your own kits too. And then, you could be anything. You could be an elephant. I don't know. Overall, it felt pretty easy to get the hang of creating a character. I do think that that's because I've already played a pre-gen character once. There is a learning curve. If you've never played any character in Draw Steel, you wouldn't fully know what to look at, right? And I think some of the terminology and the abilities might get a little overwhelming for someone who's never made or played a character in Draw Steel. For me, having a little bit of experience already, I was able to put one together pretty quickly and kind of liked how she turned out. Final thoughts. So overall, everyone who played loved the system, was talking about when it would come out, talked about moments in it, talked about playing it in the future. I think that right there suggests more to me than anything I could have said in this video. It's definitely a fun tabletop RPG. The changes from the first packet to the second packet really did some quality of life things. It really made it better. I don't have any complaints with some of these changes. I'll be interested in running games as a director when the rules finally release. But honestly, I would recommend anyone who's considering to just give it a try because it is a lot of fun, but maybe wait till they fully flesh out or try the backer kit that just released apparently. Of course, I'm always late with videos. That's all from this one. If you want to hear what I said about the first playtest packet, I'll put a link somewhere. I don't know. And I will see you guys in the next one.